Chapter 11 of the Shortstop. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Rowdy Delaney, Idaho, USA. The Shortstop by Zane Grey. Chapter 11 Inside Ball. Findlay lost the second game to Toledo, and according to Mac, largely through the weird playing by Chase. The Chronicle gave the excuse that Chase had not had time to accustom himself to the new arrangement of his eyesight. Hence his errors. Mac, however, was not disposed to be generous, and after the game told Chase he might expect a call when there was time to give it. And the players had heaped such terms of reproach upon Chase that he was well nigh distracted. He felt the cardinal necessity of acting on Castorious's advice, yet he was loath to bring matters to such an issue. On the following day, when he presented himself at the grounds, he met Mittie Maru at the dressing room entrance. It was evident that Mittie wanted to speak to him, but had only time for a warning glance before the explosion came from the players. Chase walked to his locker through a storm of Billingsgate, and somehow he sensed this was the climax. He turned his back, hurriedly got out of his suit, and began to dress. If it must come to a fight, he preferred to fight in his uniform. He listened to the storm, and for moments could scarcely distinguish any particular player's voice or epithet. Then suddenly he heard mention of a boat and a girl in such manner that his blood leaped through him like a flame. The moment had come. He was on his feet, trembling. "Hold on!" he yelled. "I know you're after me, but come now, one at a time, unless you're cowards." A blank silence followed his words. Castorious slowly separated himself from the others. Enoch glanced keenly at Chase and said, "I'm called, sonny. I was only kiddin'." Chase eyed the next player, who happened to be Havil. "Me too," he said. "I only said you're a swelled up mutt," put in Thatcher, with a disarming smile. "Aw, you're gettin' too exclusive since that hoodoo lamp was fixed. Too handsome by far," said Ziegler. "Go on, Molly. You make me sick." "Willie off the yacht?" Meade was the next player upon whom Chase fixed his flashing eyes. The first baseman evidently enjoyed the situation, for he sneered and took a couple of steps in Chase's direction. He looked mean. "Throwin' a bluff, eh? Well, you can't bluff me. You're a pie-faced towhead, that's what you are. Been shuttin' your eyes an' gettin' a few lucky hits, then swell up. See, mama's little boy. Too nice to smoke a cigar or take a drink, eh? But you mush the girls, you lollygagger. Boat ridin', eh? I know the girl, all right. She's one of your dyin' duck in the thunderstorm kind. She's " Chase struck out with all his strength. Meade crashed down into a corner, rolled over, twisted his body, but he could not rise. Chase stood over him a moment, then turned round to encounter Benny. As usual, the second baseman was partially drunk, and being a friend of Meade's, he leered threateningly at Chase and raised his arm. Chase promptly slapped him. Benny staggered, lost his balance, and tumbled over a chair, then set up a howl. Cas ran to him and helped him to his feet and held on to him. "Cas, lemme go. I been hit," howled Benny. "No, you haven't, but you will get hit in a minute if you don't look out," said Cas. At that moment Mac came into the dressing room. Some of the boys were helping Meade to rise, and once up he presented a sorry spectacle. His lip was puffed out and bloody. Benny was now in tears and crying he had no friends. "What's all this? A scrap?" questioned Mac. Chase briefly told him the circumstances and concluded in this wise: "Stood it as long as I could. And I want to say right here, if anybody gets after me again, he'll be sorry." "Shure, it was about time you broke," growled Mac. "Meade, you got what was comin' to you, and from the looks of your mug you got it good. You can take that uniform off. I'm sorry to turn you down, but business is business. You don't fit in with Findlay. I think you might get on with Wheeling, for they like your work down there. You're overdrawn, but let it go at that." "And say, Meade, take a tip from me," chirped in Mittie Maru. "You're a crack fielder, and a fair striker, and you know the game. But you're a knocker. Get wise. Get wise." Meade lost no time getting out of his suit. To the other players his release was but an incident in baseball experience. They all said a good word to him as he was passing out, and then straightway forgot him. Cas was remonstrating with Benny. It appeared Benny could not get over the idea that he must fight Chase. "But Benny, you'll get all beat up," protested Cas, "because if you lick Chase, which isn't likely, I'll have to lick you myself." This put an entirely new light on the subject. Benny began to cry again, and said, "Everybody but me hash friends." "Cut it out. You're half full. I tell you, brace up, or Mac will be letting you go too. I'm your friend. So's Chase. Here, Chase, shake hands with Benny. He thinks you've got it in for him." Chase readily offered his hand, which Benny grasped and worked as if it were a pump handle. He seemed as anxious to be friends as he had been to fight. "Benny," said Mac, "you're shaky today. I want you to cut this boozin' out. Mind, I'll let you go if you don't. Now take a little sleep before the game." Ford, the local player whom Mac was training, now came in for a talk from the manager. "Here, Ford, and you, Chase, it won't hurt you to listen. Ford, most of the balls thrown in any game go to first base, and you must always be there. Practice getting back to the base fast. The further you can play off the base and still get back, the better you'll be. Play deep when there's no one on the bases. Let the pitcher cover the base sometimes when you're fielding a hard chance, and snap the ball to him underhand. With a runner on first, keep your eye peeled on the batter. If he bunts down the first base line, you dig for the ball and peg it to second, and then hustle back to your base. A fast man gets in double plays that way. Think sharp. Throw quick. Now, on handling low throws, if you practice so you can pick up any kind of bad throw, you will save many a game, and you will steady up the other infielders. Nothing helps a fielder so much as to know he can cut loose and that you'll get any kind of throw. You've got a long reach, so don't leave the base reaching for wild throws till you have to. Keep both feet before the base so as to be able to touch it with either foot, and reach toward the ball as far as you can. The sooner you catch it, the sooner the runner is out. Got that? Now, Chase, a word with you. That was a weird game you put up yestiddy. Mind wasn't on the game, see? You was countin' your money, or somethin' like. Maybe this talk about bein' spoony has somethin' in it. Anyway, you brace. Mind, you're the keystone of the diamond. If you fall down, smash. You've got to play second and third as well as short. You got to think before the play comes off. You got to take many balls on the run. The particular thing yestiddy was your failure to catch the signals between Hicks and Benny. Twice you'd have saved runs if you'd have caught the signal. Now, today, when Hicks signs Benny that he's going to try and catch a runner off second, you back up the play. Got that?" Mac then turned to the other players of his team. "Say, Indians, I'm going to pitch Poke today, and I want you all to get up and dust." "What?" roared Castorious, his underlip protruding. "I'm going to work today." "Sure, Cas, and you can't pitch all the games. I want to save you. There's the morning game on the 4th with Kenton. We have to go over to Kenton for that, and we want to win it. We come back here for the afternoon game, and I think Spear's good for it. What's agin tryin' Poke today?" "He's crazy." "Don't put the rube in. He's wilder than a Texas steer." These and sundry other remarks expressed the players' opinion as to Mac's new find. "Well, he goes in all right," returned Mac. "And say, you fellers listen to this. Don't any of you lay down. We want that pennant. The directors have promised us a banquet, a purse, and a benefit game if we land the flag. Got that?" A chorus of exclamations greeted Mac's news. "And say, Beekman has put up an extra 100 for the leading hitter. Got that?" Another howl from the players answered him. "And say, King has put up an extra 100 for the leading fielder. Got that?" This time there was a louder howl. "And say, Guggenheimer and company have put up an extra 100 for the leading pitcher. Got that?" Cas began to dance and sing. "Do deedle dee, dum dum do deedle dee. Oh, I don't know. I guess maybe I haven't that extra 100 in my inside pocket right now." "And say, If we land the buntin' this season, we'll all have to get new trucks to carry away the suits and hats and shoes that's promised. Got thet?" Cas, Benny, Enoch, and the others formed a ring around Poke and danced in Indian fashion. "Hey, you rail splitter, if you lose today we'll kill you. Sonny, get them hayseeds out of your eyes." "Listen to this, fellows," yelled Cas, breaking up the ring. "Reuben, Reuben, we've been thinkin' that we'll put the kibosh on you if today you don't put 'em over and cut that plate right in two." Chase found himself joining lustily in the song. There was a scene of wild excitement, which for no apparent reason centered about poor bewildered Poke. The boys sang and yelled at him and slapped him on the back till they were all out of breath. "Rube, you're on. Get in the game now, you long, lanky, scared looking beanpole." On the way out, Chase, dazed at himself, not understanding why he had joined in the unanimous attack on Polk, slipped up to him and whispered, "Don't mind it. We mean well. Keep your nerve and pitch hard." The bleachers showed a disposition to resent Mac's choice in such an important game, and were not slow in voicing their feelings. "Mac, where did you get it?" "Lock the gate! Lock the gate! Get some straw for the calves of its legs. Help! 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 Well! Well! Well!" Poke undoubtedly showed nervousness when he faced the first Toledo batter, and he was wild. He drove the batter back from the plate, and then gave him his base on balls. The bleachers broke out in a roar, but the Findlay players then showed one of the beautiful features of baseball, a thing that makes the game what it is. Hicks walked toward the pitcher, and handing him the ball, said, "Ease up, ease up. Pitch for my mitt. Take more time." Then from all the players came soft, aggressive encouragement. "Make 'em hit, sonny," said Enoch. "Remember there's 7 men back here playin' with you." "Don't let any more walk, old man," said Ford. "There's a stone wall behind you, Pokey, so put 'em over," said Benny. "Let 'em hit to me," said Chase. From the outfield came low calls of similar import. Polk's heart swelled in his throat, as could be seen by the way he swallowed. He was white and dripping with sweat. His perturbation was so manifest that the Toledo players jeered at him. His situation was the most important and painful stage in the evolution of a pitcher. Much depended on how he would meet it. He threw the ball toward the next batter, who hit it back to him. Poke made a good stop of the ball, dropped it, recovered it, and then stood helpless. Both runners were safe. The Toledo players yelled. The bleachers roared. Poke's chance shone a little dimmer. Again the Findlay players voiced their characteristic inspiriting calls. Poke threw off his cap and again faced a batter. "Stay with 'em till your hair blows out," called Enoch. The batter hit the next ball sharply to Chase. He was on it with a leap, picked it up cleanly, touched second base on the run, and whipped it to first, making a double play. The runner on second had, of course, reached third. "2 down, old man. Play the hitter. Make him hit." Toledo's man drove up a long fly in Thatcher's direction. As he ran to get under it, the bleachers yelled, "In the well! In the well!" Past experience had taught them what fate to expect of a fly ball hit to the dude. For Findlay, Enoch went out on a foul to the catcher. Thatcher had 2 strikes called, missed the next, and retired in disgust. Chase, now batting third, worked a base on balls. A passed ball sent him to second. Then Havil hit sharply through short field. Chase started for third with all his speed. The play was for him to score. When he reached third he was going like the wind. As he circled round the base, Bud, the Toledo third baseman, stuck out his hip. Chase collided with it, went hurtling through the air, and rolled over and over. He felt a severe pain, and the field whirled round. He could not make a move before Bud got the ball and touched him out. Mac and Enoch came running. The former spoke some hot words to Bud. "What you givin' us?" said that individual. "Didn't he run agin me? Go soak your head." Enoch was bending over Chase. Mittie ran out with a cup of water, and other players surrounded them. "I'm not hurt much, I guess," said Chase. "I'm only dizzy. Wait a minute. What did he do to me?" "Call time!" yelled Mac to the umpire. Chase, I told you to look out for Bud. Thet's his old trick. He gave you the hip, stuck out his hip, and spilled you all over the field. It's a dirty trick and a bad thing for a fast man to run agin. I hope you ain't hurt." "Shure, you did tumble. Won't forget thet in a hurry." "Say, Bud, why don't you ever try thet on me?" demanded Cas. "Bah!" replied Bud, and walked toward the bench. Chase was considerably shaken up and bruised, but able to go on with the game. He did not say another word about it, only he made a mental reservation that he would surprise Mr. Budd the next time he rounded third base. Some snappy fielding saved Poke again in the second inning, and in the third Toledo made a run on a base on balls, a hit, and a fly to the outfield. Then the long pitcher seemed to settle down and lose his nervousness. Thereafter he mowed the Toledo batters down as if they were cornstalks on his farm. The harder he worked, the swifter he threw, the steadier he became. He was ungainly. He did not know how to pitch, but what speed he had! The fickle bleachers atoned for their derision. The grandstands showed their delight. And the Findlay players, one and all, kept talking to him, lauding him to the skies, and belittling the hitters who faced him. "Oh, I don't know. Pretty poor. I guess not. Poke 'em over, Poke. Speed. Oh no, you can't see 'em. Grand, Rube, grand." In the eighth inning, when Findlay came in for their bat, Chase ran into the dressing room and searched for a horseshoe nail that he remembered seeing. He put it in his pocket. There was one man out when he came to the bat, and he determined to get his base. As luck would have it, he placed a hot single to right field. As soon as he reached first and stopped, he took the horseshoe nail out of his pocket and held it firmly in his left hand, point exposed. One glance toward the bench gave him the sign. Mac's score card was in sight, which meant to run on the first ball pitched. Chase watched the Toledo pitcher with hawk-like eyes. He got up on his toes, and as the pitcher started to swing, Chase started for second base. He heard the crack of a ball as Havil hit it, and saw it shoot out over short to bound between the running fielders. He ran as he had never run before, turned second, raced for third, and gripped his horseshoe nail. Bud was leisurely backing into third base trickily, to get there just at the right instant. Chase sped onward, with his eye on that muscular hip. He saw it suddenly, like a gray flash, protrude into his path, and using all his force he swung upward with the horseshoe nail. Bud sprang spasmodically into the air. "Ugh!" A hoarse yell escaped him. The crowd in the stands and bleachers did not know what Chase had done, but as he easily scored while Bud walked Spanish, they divined the triumph of retaliation, and howled with all the might of the fair-minded lovers of sport. But the Findlay players and the Toledo players knew how the little youngster Chase had got back at the veteran Bud. It was a play such as every ball player reveled in. It embodied the great spirit of the game. And to a man they broke out and pranced over the field in unbridled joy. For a time the game was interrupted. And the best part of the incident was when, after Findlay had won 7-3, Bud went into the Findlay dressing room and said to Chase, "Kid, shake hands. I've been looking for that for years." End of chapter 11. Chapter 12 of the Shortstop. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Rowdy Delaney, Idaho, USA. Chapter 12. Popularity. Small boys ushered in the 4th of July with a bang. The noise began at daybreak, and at 9 o'clock, when the ball team left for Kenton, it was in full blast. A trainload of happy enthusiasts accompanied the team. Small boys without tickets hid under the seats, with determination in their hearts and hearts in their throats, and the conductor, being a boy himself that morning, with a wager on Findlay, saw nothing. 500 strong we're going over," said Mac, rubbing his hands. "Shure, we'll draw down a big slice of gate money today." "Rotten arrangement this morning game at Kenton," growled his players. "Kenton is bad enough on any day, but the Fourth, oh Lord, what they'll do to us!" "We can't win," continued Cas, pessimistically. "We'll be dodging giant firecrackers. Mark what I say." When they bowled into the Kenton grounds and poured out of the bus, an enormous shirt sleeved crowd roared a welcome that was defiance. Then waiting showers of red firecrackers began to fly, and the scene became a smoke clouded battlefield. Small guns popped incessantly, and artillery worked strenuously. When this explosion subsided and the smoke rolled away, the Findlay team stood covered with little red and yellow pieces of paper and sniffing the brimstone in the air. "Get in and scrap today, boys," cried Enoch, and for once his voice was not soft. "There's nothing to it," said Cas, forgetting his prophecy. "A short, hard practice now," added Mac. "Start the dust. Dig 'em up and peg 'em. Keep lively and noisy." Kenton was very different from Wheeling, being one of those baseball towns where the patrons of the game could not see a point, or appreciate a play, or applaud a game unless it was won by their own team. This operated to the poor showing of their team, because when opposing teams visited Kenton they were driven to desperation by the criticism and taunts and atmosphere of an unsportsmanlike crowd, and they fought the games to the last ditch. Mac particularly warned his players not to question a single decision of the umpire. That official, Silk O'Connor, baseballically reported to be as smooth as silk, was to be in the points that day. Silk was the best umpire in the league, but he was not especially beloved in Kenton. He had officiated at too many games lost by 1 run, and Silk had an irritating habit of adding a caustic comment to some of his rulings, a kind of wit that did not inspire the players to silence. Further, which seemed unreasonable, he never allowed a player to talk back to him. "Look out for Silk today, boys," concluded Mac. "He's up agin it here, same as we are. Don't expect no close decisions. Don't even look at him. Just drive these Kenton pitchers into the woods. Make the game one sided." "Play ball," called Silk. Enoch had scarcely reached the batter's box when the Kenton pitcher delivered the ball. "Strike," called Silk. Then in a low voice, "Foggy eye." Another ball came speeding up. "Strike 2." "Up late last night?" Enoch's round face grew red, and the lump in his cheek swelled out. He slammed at the next ball and sent it safely past the third baseman. Thatcher hurried up and took his position on the left side of the plate. "Strike," called Silk. "Hairbrushed fine, dude." Thatcher bunted the next ball and dashed for first. The pitcher fielded the ball and overthrew, letting Enoch go to third and Thatcher to second. "Don't wait," whispered Mac to Chase. "Bing the first good one." Chase did bing one, and that with a vengeance. He had the ability to line the ball. This particular hit seemed to be going straight into the hands of the center fielder, but just before reaching him it sailed up and shot over his head. "Oh!" yelled Cas on the coaching line. "Take your time, Enoch. Slow down, dude. It's easy. Oh my! I guess it wasn't a beaut. Come on, come on, come on. Slide, Chase, slide. That's the way to hit the ground." Havil batted a high fly to an outfielder. Chase leaned forward and watched the ball till it landed in the fielder's hands, then darted for the plate. The fielder threw quickly, making a fine race between ball and runner, but Chase had never been thrown out on such a play. He slid over the plate just as the ball sped into the catcher's hands. The game progressed. Kenton came in for their inning and failed to score. Castorious was in rare form. On a hot day his arm was like India rubber. Findlay added 1 run in the second and again blanked their opponents. In the third Chase got his second hit, and 3 hits following his, coupled with a base on balls and 2 errors, netted 3 more runs. Again Cas foiled the Kenton batters, and the impatient crowd stamped. In the fifth 2 Kenton players hit safely with 1 out. The crowd began to howl. Hicks snapped the ball to Benny, who tagged the runner trying to get back to second. "Out!" Silk called. The Kenton players ran in a body for the umpire. The grandstand raged. The bleachers rose as one man. "He's safe! He's safe! Robber! Robber! Kill him! Kill him!" Silk ordered the players back to the bench. Cas struck out the next two batters and elicited another storm from the bleachers. Someone threw a huge firecracker at Cas. Boom! It exploded like a bursting cannon. Cas shook his fist at the bleachers, and that brought forth a rain of smaller firecrackers. Enoch went up and had a strike called on him. He looked at Silk and made a motion with his hand to indicate the ball had passed wide of the plate. "Strike two," called Silk imperturbably. Enoch glared at him. "Strike three," called Silk more imperturbably. "You're out." Enoch leaned gracefully on his bat, spat tobacco juice about 6 yards, and said in his soft voice, "Do you know a ball when you see it?" "That costs you 5," sang out Silk. "Make it 10, you mullet. Why, Enoch, how sweet you talk. 10 it is." "Make it 15, pinhead. Dear me, the older you get the more you gab. 15 it is." "Make it 20, you web-footed bat." "20 it is, and out of the game. The bench for yours." Enoch roared something in inarticulate rage. "Get out of the grounds," ordered Silk, and he held his watch till Enoch shouldered his bat and left the field. Mac threw up his hands as if he knew the game was all over then. But even without their captain and third baseman, Findlay kept blanking Kenton. In the eighth, Cas went to the bat. A silence ensued that seemed to presage some striking event. It came in the shape of a huge red firecracker that tumbled over and over in the air, and dropping behind Cas, exploded with a terrific report, tearing the seat out of his trousers. Cas jumped about 8 feet, and then, transformed into a veritable demon, brandishing his bat and roaring like a mad bull, he made for the bleachers. If Mac and several policemen had not intercepted him, the scene might have passed from comedy to tragedy. As it was, all Cas could do was wave his fist at the hooting bleachers and yell, "I can lick the man who threw that!" "Boo! Boo! Redhead! Redhead! I can lick you all!" bawled Cas, foaming at the mouth. In the prevailing excitement, the Findlay supporters naturally and foolishly poured out of the stands upon the field. Silk promptly called the game 9-0 in Kenton's favor. Then began one of those familiar scenes common to a baseball crowd on the glorious Fourth. Like water, the Kenton spectators spilled themselves into the melee. What with the angry altercations between partisans of the teams, and yells, and horn blowing, and shouting of the winners, and pushing, jostling, crowding of both sides, the affair bid well to degenerate into a real fight. But this did not happen. It almost never happens. Great rivalry, great provocation, never yet spoiled the fair spirit of the game. But the Findlay players ran a not soon to be forgotten gauntlet to the railroad station. Sore they were, particularly Cas, who was not able to sit down on the way home. And threatening were the supporters, but by the time the gong rang for the afternoon game in Findlay, resentment vanished in present enjoyment. For the attendance was very large, the afternoon perfect, and the game a spirited and thrilling one. Only a single misplay marred the brilliant fielding. Both pitchers kept the hitting down. The final score was 2-1 in Findlay's favor. Chase's star rose higher, and if there were any who did not admit his popularity before the game, there were none after. For at the right time, at the one great absorbing climax, at the moment when eyes flashed, hands clenched, and hearts almost stopped beating, he performed the unexpected feat. The one thing absolutely glorious to the hoping, despairing audience. Drove the ball far over the fence. That hit settled it. Never had there been one like it save Dan Brothers' great and memorable drive of years gone by. Mac threw up his hands and stared in rapture at his star. The crowd carried Chase off the field. When a player becomes the idol of the fans, it meant something. But when a player made fans out of staid businessmen and young society men and girls in school and women prominent in town and church affairs, then that meant a great deal. It meant money in the box office, support for the team, willing, eager, working baseball champions. And such a wave carried the Findlay team to the top of popularity, with Chase on the very crest. He was the recipient of more presents in the way of suits, hats, shoes, canes, umbrellas than he knew what to do with. He received a beautiful gold watch with his monogram engraved on it. He was asked to luncheon with prominent business men. He was invited everywhere. And last, a photographer lured him into his den. There took his picture, and reproducing it on small buttons, sold them by the hundreds. Every youngster and almost every girl in town proudly wore Chase's picture. He was public property. This latter fact became a source of pain to Chase. One day Mittie Maru, having met Marjory by the river, had enlarged upon this matter of the picture buttons, with the result that he had interesting news for Chase. "She wouldn't have one. What do you think of thet? She said you were conceited to allow 'em sold. Somehow she blamed you for it. An' when I asked her if 'twasn't nice to see all the girls wearin' 'em, what do you think she said? Sickenin'! Thet's what, sickenin'! Now I'm wise about girls, an' I up an' told her she was a victim of the green eyed monster. Then what do you think she said? 'Mittie Maru, you needn't speak to me ever any more.' Queered myself pluggin' your game along, thet's what I did." Thereafter, whenever Chase saw one of the buttons decorating the front of a schoolgirl's blouse, he had a moment of chagrin, and called himself names for ever going into that picture gallery. And when he saw Marjory, he learned what she thought of the selling of his pictures all over town for 10 cents each. "But Marjory," said Chase, "even if they do sell so cheap, it's good business. It advertises the team, and I get a percentage." "Every girl in town can have your picture," replied Marjory, severely. Evidently the possibilities of the case weighed more with Marjory than the notoriety. Mac, too, showed concern because of the popularity of his shortstop. More than once he hinted to Chase the necessity of a ball player's duty not to be carried away by praise and entertainment. There would come a time, Mac averred, when he would strike a spell of bad form, when the tide of popular favor would ebb, and then he would wish he had not let himself be made so much of. And one day towards the close of July, Mac sought Chase out in the evening. He seemed eager and excited, yet anxious. He chewed on his cigar stub and talked and held to Chase. "Got a date to night?" he asked for the 20th time. "Yes," Chase said. "I'll let you go in a minute. There's somethin' I want to say. Chase, are you sure you won't go up in the air if I tell you? It's great." "What do you mean?" "Why, I've been a little scairt about all this hobnobbin' and fussin' of yours. You're only a kid, Chase, and maybe only another puff or so will blow you out of sight. Haven't I listened to you always and kept both feet on the ground?" "Sure, Chase, sure you have. I never trained a lad who took to things as you." "You needn't worry about me, Mac. I'm having a great time here. There's no doubt about it. I like everybody. I'm not missing anything. But what they say or think about my playing hasn't anything to do with it, one way or another. On the surface it looks easy, like real play, but you know I've worked and am working to learn the game. I've got to succeed." "Good. That's the spirit. Now listen. Rainey, the manager of Cincinnati, wrote me about you, and today Burke, manager of Detroit, was here in the grandstands watchin' your work. None of us knew till after the game. He sneaked in foxy like. It's just as well, because maybe you'd been nervous. As it was, you put up your usual hard, fast game. He says to me just now, I walked to the station with him, he says, 'That's a fast lad. Can he hit?' And I says, 'Can he? Well, he's been rippin' the boards off the fence all season.' Then he says, 'Send me his battin' average and give me first say on him when the season's over.'" Mac spit out his cigar, moistened his lips, and producing papers from his pocket, went on. "I asked Manning of the Chronicle to make out the averages. Here they are. You're hittin' .398 and leadin' Dude by a mile. It's hard to believe, Chase, but there's the figgers. You keep puttin' the wood on 'em, and besides, you work a good many bases on balls. Thet tells. Now get this and keep it under your hat. If you can hang on with thet kind of stick work I'll sell you for big money when the season's over. And if you make it an even 400 I'll give you 1/3 of the purchase price. Got thet?" "Do I? Mac, I'll tear the legs off all the third basemen in the league from now on," replied Chase, with fire in his eyes. He saw the tired face of his mother and her toil worn hands, and he saw the pale, thoughtful features of his brother. That afternoon he got 2 triples and a home run out of 5 times at bat. "Shure nothin' can stop him now," choked Matt from the bench. And what spoke well for Chase and his future was his popularity with the team. The course of sprouts had long since been gone through. Poke and Ford were now the butts of the players. Cas adored him. Enoch called him Sonny, now with a fatherly friendliness. The Dude and Havil sought his society, and Benny hung on him like a leech. "Cut out the drinkin' and come with me," Chase had said one evening. And he had taken Benny from the hangers on round the hotel, the young sports who liked to buy drinks, the rich oil men who had nothing but money. Benny was ashamed and backward, but he enjoyed the evening. And Chase took to him again, and came to like him. "How much do you draw, Benny, if you don't mind tellin'?" asked Chase. "150." "What do you do with it all?" "Blow it in." "Don't you save any?" "How can a man save and skate with thet fly crowd? What doesn't go for booze goes for poker. Sometimes I manage to send a 10 spot home." "I send money home every month." "I ought to." Benny bowed his head. "Folks need it?" "Lord! They're poor, sometimes awful poor when the governor is laid up with rheumatiz. There's mother, she's well and strong, but my sister's most always ailin'. I never let myself think of them when I'm sober, and can't when I'm drunk." "Benny, you'd be the best second baseman in this league if you didn't drink. Think of how much you could help your folks, even now, let alone what you might do if you worked up to a bigger job." "I don't care much for the booze. There's always somebody jollyin' me," Benny said. It happened that Chase knew a Molly McCoy, a saucy, sparkling eyed girl who admired Benny and wanted to meet him. So Chase, when he had worn off Benny's rough edges and made him manifest some interest in his appearance, took him to see Molly. The little lady fell in with Chase's deep laid plot, perhaps more from the eternal feminine than from any other reason, and she made her sparkling eyes complete Chase's good beginning. She attached Benny to herself. And he, unable to comprehend, quite overcome, stuttered to Chase about it, and said most foolish and irrelevant things. Wise Chase! He pretended there was nothing remarkable about the matter. To be sure, Molly was simply delightful. Of course, she had wonderful lovely eyes. He took care to hint to Benny that there were any number of young men in town who thought so, and tried to tell Molly so. And vastly Chase said, as if it were a thing Benny did not need to be told, as if it were a simple conclusion, it wouldn't do to drink if any fellow wanted to go with Molly. Benny bought gorgeous neckties regularly after that, looked mysterious when his player friends chaffed him, and wore cool towards his former boon companions. The hotel bar rooms seldom saw him, and it was noticeable that the heated flush faded out of his face. And when some misguided player hit a ball anywhere in the vicinity of second base, the bleachers sang, "Benny's barred the door." During the latter half of July, Findlay kept the lead over Columbus by a small margin. And when that team presented itself for a series of 3 games, the excitement waxed keen. After the first game, which Findlay won, Chase met a very agreeable, smooth faced, quiet looking man. Chase had seen him about town somewhere, and was under the impression that Cas or Mac had said he was one of the many gamblers known in the oil belt. He talked baseball and appeared friendly, so Chase treated him civilly. The next day he met him again. They sat in the lobby of the hotel and talked a while. It appeared the man had an engagement with Speer and was waiting for him. Some time later Chase saw the stranger with Spear and noticed that the latter had been drinking. This occasioned Chase some surprise, because Mac expected to pitch Spear in the next game, and Mac's rules in regard to drink were stringent. On Saturday, when Chase passed the small park near his boarding house, he encountered the agreeable gentleman sitting on one of the park benches. "Hello, Chase. Fine hot day for a game. Sit down. I've been enjoying the shade." Chase took a seat, more from his habit of pleasantry than from any desire to converse with the man. He was aware of the close scrutiny, but being used to that sort of thing, took little heed of it. "How about the game today?" asked the fellow. "We'll win. We've got to have 2 out of 3. Think there's any chance to win some money?" "I never advise bets." The gentleman adjusted his cuffs, picked a thread off his coat sleeve, and flicked the dust from his patent leather boots. Then, quite casually, he glanced around the park. "Have you seen Spear this morning?" he asked. "No." "Hm. He said he expected to see you. Maybe he will yet." Then he took a roll of bills from his pocket, snapped off a rubber and unrolled them, showing tens and twenties, rolled them up again, and snapped on the band. He was most deliberate. His next move was to hand the roll to Chase. "Stick that in your pocket." Chase would have been more surprised if he had not already been the recipient of so many presents. Still, this seemed out of all proportion. He could not imagine why a big sum of money should be handed to him by a total stranger, and he said so. "You're wise. If not, Spear will put you wise," replied the man, again adjusting his cuffs. "Is this money for me?" "Sure." "What for?" "Aren't you wise?" "I certainly am not." "Well, I got a chance to win a few $1,000s this afternoon. Here, I won't try to place any money for you. That bundle's for you, and you'll get another like it if I win." "Do you mean you're going to bet on Findlay and give me this money to make me play all the harder? Because if you do, take it back. I couldn't play any harder for $10,000. "Not exactly. You see, I'm betting on Columbus." "Oh?" Then the man shook off his slow, deliberate manner, rose to his feet, and glanced at Chase with keen, hard eyes. "You're wise now, aren't you?" "Not exactly," said Chase slowly. "It's a cinch. You're going to pull off a couple of hundred. It's like finding money. I've got Spear fixed. Now all you need to do is to fall over a couple of grounders this afternoon, or make a wild throw at a critical time. See? You're asking me to lay down. Be off your form. You're trying to buy me to throw the game?" Chase rose unsteadily. Call it so if you like, but..." In blind rage, Chase threw the money in the gambler's face and pushed him violently with his left hand. The gambler staggered against the bench. Then Chase swung his right arm with all the power he could summon. Gambler and bench went down together. "You hound!" cried Chase, quivering. "I'll have you run out of town for this." On the instant Chase wheeled and hurried down the avenue to the hotel. He went directly to Spear's room, to find the pitcher lying on his bed looking rather sick. "Spear, what's this I hear?" demanded Chase, and he breathlessly described the proposition that had just been made to him. "Ain't it rotten of me? He bought me, Chase, but I was drunk," said Spear in tears. "I'm sober enough now to know what a deal it was." "Sure you were drunk," exclaimed Chase, "but I won't peach, old man. You just forget it and cut out drinking with strangers after this." Chase bolted downstairs and collided with Mac, Cas, Enoch, and Thatcher, all going in to lunch. "Fellows, I just punched a man who tried to buy me to throw the game. Flashed 100 on me. Tried to put it in my pocket." "What?" roared Cas. "Where is he?" Mac swore. "Smooth faced guy, well dressed, big blinker in his tie. I saw him hanging round. What we won't do to him. Come on," Cas roared. "Wait, get the gang," shouted Enoch, but the smooth-tongued, smooth-faced gentleman could not be found. Several passengers at the station testified to seeing a gentleman answering that description, except that he had a badly swelled and discolored eye, going north along the tracks. That night the story was town talk, and Chase was a hero. End of chapter 12. Chapter 13 of the Shortstop. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Rowdy Delaney, Idaho, USA. The Shortstop by Zane Gray. Chapter 13. Sunday Ball. "Say, sure I got something to tell you Indians that I ain't stuck on," said Mac. "The directors have decided to play Sunday ball." The boys could not have made a more passionate and angry outbreak if they had heard they were to be hanged. "Beef, beef!" shouted Mac, red as a lobster. "Haven't I been agin it? You puff in front of the hotel stiffs talk as if I was to blame." "What?" roared Castorious. "Gimme my release," cried Benny, who had recently taken to attending a certain church. Benny never did anything by halves. The dude flung his bat through a window, carrying away glass and sash. All except Chase were violent in word and action, and he was too greatly surprised to move or speak. Mac's position often assumed exasperating phases. This was one of them. He tried reason on the most choleric of his players with about as much success as if they had been brass mules. They persisted in venting their spleen on him. Then he lost his temper. "Flannel mouths! Have you all swallowed red hot bricks? Cheese it now, cheese it! The guy that doesn't report here Sunday gets let down, and fined besides. Got that?" Chase left the grounds in some distress of mind. The past 4 weeks had been so perfect that he had forgotten things could go wrong. Sunday ball! It had never occurred to him. To give up his place on the team and all the bright promise of the future he could not consider for a moment. He would have to reconcile himself to the inevitable. But what would his mother say? He might keep it from her. He did not need to tell her. She never would find it out. No, the temptation lasted only a moment. He would not deceive her. And then a further consideration weighed upon him. If he played baseball on the Sabbath in order to attain a future success, would that success be an honest one? He was afraid it would not. He had been trained to respect the Sabbath. If he kept faith with his training, he must confess Sunday games were wrong. Nevertheless, he could not harbor the idea of resigning his place. This made him feel he was wilfully doing wrong, and he plunged into bitterness of spirit. It was with no little curiosity that Chase went out upon the field on Sunday. The grandstand looked as usual. Many familiar faces were there. The bleachers were packed, and a line of men and boys 20 deep extended along to the right and left of the diamond. Chase had never seen such a crowd in the grounds, nor had he ever seen such enthusiasm. All at once it occurred to him that there were hundreds and thousands of boys and men who worked every daylight hour 6 days in the week. They were new to him, and he saw that he was as new to them. They had never seen him play. They had never before had a chance to see a ball game in Findlay. A question came naturally to Chase's quick mind. Had they played the game when they were mere tots on the commons and learned to love it as he had? A blind man would have answered in the affirmative. They were wild and bubbling over from sheer joy. If they loved the game and had only one day to go, albeit that day was Sunday, were they doing harm? Chase could not answer that, but he knew whatever it was for them applied also to him. Findlay won the first Sunday game. A greater and noisier crowd had never been in attendance. Noise! The field was howling bedlam. The boys ran like unleashed colts. The men cheered their own players, roared at their opponents and at each other. In his heart Chase was trying desperately hard to justify his own part in it, and because of that he saw much and found food for reflection. Well he knew the pallor of these boys. It came from the dark, sunless foundries. The hundreds of men present had a yellowish, oily look. They were the diggers and refiners, the laborers from the oil fields. At first Chase thought their unbridled mirth, their coarse jests at the umpire, at the players, and themselves, their unremitting wild, hoarse yells as unnatural as strident. Then suddenly a smile here, a laugh of delight there, told him all this was only natural. These men and boys had found expression for their pent up feelings, for a short delight in contrast to the long day. This was their hour of freedom. "Yell, that's right, yell," muttered Chase through his teeth as he went to bat. He felt for them, but he could not quite understand. He drove one of his famous liners against the fence. "Yell for that," he said to himself. A long, screeching, swelling howl of rapture rose from the fields and stands. It rang in Chase's ears as he sped round the bases, and when, after sliding into third, he stood up, he saw a sight he never forgot. The crowd was one leaping, tossing, waving, crazy mass. With Chase, to get the track of anything was to trail it to the end. The faces and actions of that crowd made him think. Their frenzied glee made him sad, because it reminded him of his old longing for freedom, and its very violence bespoke the bottled up love of play. These men and boys wanted to play, and circumstances made it so they could not. They loved to play. As they had mothers, sisters, brothers, children to support, they had no time to play. As the next best thing, they loved to see someone else play. And they had only one day, Sunday. "It's this way," said Chase to himself. "If these men and boys spend their Sundays at home and in church, then Sunday ball is wrong. If they spend it otherwise, then Sunday ball is not wrong." Chase was tenacious and stubborn. He found he loved the game as a boy because of the play in it. Now he loved it because of what it was doing for him, because he believed in it. And he set himself to find out what it might be doing for others. He could not write to his mother until he had decided the question. So he spent much of his leisure time going the rounds of the foundries, factories, refineries, brick yards, and he took care to drop into all the saloons, the beer gardens, and dance halls. Everywhere he was known and welcomed. He asked questions, he listened, and he watched. When another Sunday had passed he was in possession of all he needed to know. With immeasurable relief he decided that while he would rather not play Sunday ball, it was not wrong for him to do so. He even decided he was doing good. Thus he settled the perplexing question forever in his own conscience. He would tell his mother how he had arrived at his conclusion, and as for others, it did not matter what they thought. All this time Chase had not been blind to certain indications of coolness on the part of people who had hitherto been pleased to be courteous and affable. And as these indications came solely from chance meetings in the streets, he began to wonder how much deeper their coolness would go, provided he sought the society of these persons. That thought alone kept him away from Marjory for over a week. He believed she would understand, and still be his friend. But instinctively he feared her mother, and he had a momentary twinge when he called to mind the young minister so welcome in the Dean household. One evening, when a party of ladies coolly snubbed him, Chase could stand the suspense no longer. So he presented himself at Marjory's home, and much to his relief found her on the porch alone. "Chase, Mama has forbidden me to see you," she said, with her blue eyes on him. Chase gulped when he saw the eyes were unchanged, still warm and bright. "No? Oh, Marjory, it's not so bad as that." "Yes. But Chase, you just give up the Sunday games and then everything will be all right." "I can't do that." "Why not? Let them play without you." "It's no use, Marjory. Either I play on Sundays or I give up the game. And it means a good deal to me. Does your mother say it's wrong?" "She says it's awful. And Mr. Marsden held up his hand in holy horror when he heard it. He's going to work against it. Stop it. Do you think it's so terribly wrong?" "Oh, Chase, for you to ask me that! Don't you know it?" "No, I don't," replied Chase, stubbornly. "Then you won't give it up?" "No, not Not even to please me?" "I would if I could, but I can't. Marjory, please." "Then good bye." "Oh!" cried Chase, sharply. He looked at her. The long lashes were down. "You've said that as if I were Look here, Marjory Dean. I'm working for my mother. I've seen her faint when she came home at night. I've seen her hands bleed. If every day were Sunday and baseball bad, which it's not, I'd play. What do I care for Mr. Marsden? He's so dry he rattles like a beanstalk. I don't care what your mother thinks. I don't care what you think, either. Good bye." He strode off the porch. A low, tremulous "Chase" did not halt him. He was bitterly hurt, angry, and sick. He went to his room, fought out his bad hour alone in the dark, and then came forth feeling himself older and resigned. But he was more determined than ever to stand by the game. Sunday another great throng yelled itself hoarse at the grounds, and went home in shirt sleeves, sweaty, tired, and happy. Chase dressed, went to dinner, and then strolled round to the hotel. All the boys were there, lounging in familiar groups. He thought they all seemed rather quiet, and looked queerly at him. Before he learned what was in the air, a policeman whom he knew well stepped up reluctantly. "Chase, I've got a warrant for you." The blood round Chase's heart seemed to freeze. He stared, unable to speak. "My partner has gone to arrest Mac," continued the officer. "Here's the warrant." The printed words blurred in Chase's sight, but his own name in writing, and the term Sunday baseball, and the Reverend Marsden's name, told him the meaning of the arrest. "I'm sorry, Chase. I hate to run you in, but I've my duty," said the officer, and whispered lower, "We'll try to get word to Mayor Duff, so you can get bail and not be locked up." "Bail? Locked up?" echoed Chase, stupidly. Mac appeared with another officer. The little manager was pale but composed. "Sure, we're pinched, Chase," he said, and as the players crowded round, he continued, "Fade away now, or you'll put people wise. Somebody hunt up King and Beekman, send 'em to the station. Cas, you dig for Mayor Duff's house, and ask him to come take bail for us. Lord, I hope he's home. If not, the law puts us in a cell tonight. Sure, somebody has done us dirt. Them warrants might have been made out for tomorrow." "Mac, you and Chase walk round to the station alone," said one of the officers. "We'll go another way." "Thanks. Sure you're all right," replied Mac. "Come on, Chase. Don't look so peaked." "Isn't the whole team arrested?" queried Chase. "Sure, and the whole team'll be on trial, but the warrants read for manager and one player. It'd be more regular to have pinched Enoch, as he is captain. Don't know why they picked out you." "Is playing on Sunday against the law?" "Nah, not any more'n drivin' a team, but these moss back people twist things and call us a nuisance and immoral and Lord knows what. Here we are at the station. It's pretty tough on you, kid, but don't quit. This won't hurt you any." The two officers met them, unlocked the station house doors, and ushered them into the mayor's office. Presently Beekman strode in, big and important, and said it was not necessary to call in King, for he would go bail for both. "If Duff's in town, he'll come," continued Beekman. Presently the sounds of a fast trotting horse and flying wheels drew an officer to the window. "The mayor's here," he said. Mac settled back with a deep breath. "Good!" he exclaimed. A tall man with a gray beard came in hurriedly, followed by Castorious. He nodded to all, threw his gloves on the desk, and took the warrants held out to him. In a few moments he had made the necessary recording of the arrests and of accepted bail. Then he shook hands with Mac and Chase. "Glad I happened to run into Castorious. Was driving out into the country. You'll get your hearing to morrow morning, and if you wish, I'll set the trial for Wednesday or Thursday morning." "The sooner the better," replied Mac. Then the mayor bowed pleasantly and left. Chase followed the others out. He could scarcely realize that he had been arrested, and leaving his friends in earnest conversation, he went to his room and to bed. He did not have a very restful night. The morning papers were full of the particulars of the arrest and the consideration of Sunday ball, and the subject was the absorbing topic of conversation everywhere. All the directors of the team were present at the hearing, and afterwards repaired to Judge Megg's office to discuss the matter of defense. Meggs was a shrewd old lawyer, and incidentally an admirer of the game of baseball. While in office he had been known to adjourn court because he wanted to see Findlay wallop their rivals. Therefore it was felt that with the case in his hands the team would escape imprisonment and fine even if Sunday ball were discontinued. Beekman and King had visited practically all the men of business in Findlay, and stating their case, that the Sunday game was conducted in an orderly manner, that no drinks were sold at or near the grounds, that it was played at the earnest request of thousands of working men and boys, had gotten a long list of signatures to their petition favoring the game. During the discussion as to the defense one of the directors had mentioned the fact that certain members of the laboring class were better off in summer for the playing of the game. "Can you prove that?" asked Judge Meggs. "I know it's true," spoke up Chase. "How do you know?" returned the lawyer. Somewhat incoherently, but with the eager earnestness of conviction, Chase told what he knew. Then the judge questioned him in regard to his motive, drew him out to tell what baseball meant to him and to others like him, with the result that he presently said to the directors: "Gentlemen, we have our defense, and you can take my word for it, we shall win." He asked Chase to call at his office an hour before the time fixed upon for the trial next day. Findlay lost the ball game that afternoon. They played listlessly, and plainly showed the effects of the cloud hanging over them. On Wednesday Chase went to Judge Megg's office at the appointed time. "Now, Chase, if you were a star of the diamond you ought to shine just as brightly in the courtroom. This morning when I call on you I want you to get up and tell the court what you told me about yourself and baseball. Be simple, earnest, and straightforward. You have here the opportunity to vindicate yourself and your fellow players, so make the best of it." Chase went to the courtroom with the judge. It was crowded with people. The Findlay team and the team visiting town at the time occupied front seats. All the directors and many business men were present. There was a plentiful sprinkling of ladies in the background. Mayor Duff opened the proceedings as soon as the judge arrived with Chase. The prosecuting minister did not appear. His representative, a young lawyer, rose and expatiated on the evils of the Findlay team in general and of Sunday ball in particular. These young men set bad examples, engendered idleness and love of play. They were opposed to work. They enticed boys from school to see a useless and sometimes dangerous sport. They fostered the spirit of rivalry and gambling. Baseball on Sunday was an abomination, and it was a desecration of the Sabbath. It added to the undermining of the church. It opposed the teachings of the Bible. It kept the boys and girls from Sunday school. Sunday was a day of rest, of prayer, of quiet communion, not a day for playing, howling, yelling, mobbing, carousing. The permitting of the game was a disgrace to the decent name of Findlay, a shame to her respectable citizens, and a sin to her churches. The prosecution examined witnesses, who swore to endless streams of passing men on the streets, of yelling that made the afternoon a hideous nightmare, of brawls on corners and mob violence in the ball grounds, of hoodlums accosting women, and there the prosecution rested. Judge Meggs read the petition and the names of the men who signed it, and he said there could be little doubt of the great benefit Findlay had derived in a business way from the advertising given to it by the baseball team. "Your Honor," he concluded impressively, "I will now have one of the defendants tell his experience of baseball." At a word from Judge Meggs, Chase stepped forward. His face was white, his eyes dark from excitement, but he appeared entirely self possessed. "Your Honor, I am 18 years old, and have played baseball as long as I can remember. I learned in the streets and on the lots of Akron. When I was 12 years old I left school to support my mother and a crippled brother. I sold papers, did odd jobs, anything that offered. I had a crooked eye then, and it was hard for me to get a place. People didn't like my looks. At 14 I went to work in a molding department of a factory. I studied at night to try to get some education. When I had been there a year I earned $5 a week. After 4 years I was earning $6 a week. I did not advance fast. Last summer I played ball on the factory team. This spring I decided to be a ball player. My mother opposed me, but I persuaded her. I started out to find a place on a team. My crooked eye was against chances of success. I became a tramp and beat my way from town to town. I starved, but I hung on. One morning I awoke in a fence corner. A woman I spoke to said the town nearby was Findlay. I hunted up the ball grounds and the manager. He didn't see my ragged clothes or my crooked eye. He gave me a chance. I played a wretched game. I expected to be thrown from the grounds. He gave me money, said he would keep me, would teach me the game. I tried hard and I made good. I have been happy here in Findlay. I never knew what friends meant. Everybody has been kind to me. I have dreamed of one day being a businessman here. But best for me was what I could do for my mother and brother. She does not take in washing any more, or sew herself blind late into the nights. My brother has had treatment for his hip. He has the books he needed, and he will get the education he longs for. When I learned we were to play Sunday ball I was stunned. I never thought of that. My mother gave me Christian teaching, and I kept the Sabbath day. I was sick with doubt. I felt that I was going to do wrong. I concluded that it would be wrong, but I had no mind to sacrifice my place on the team. That had been too dearly bought. It meant too much to me. My mother had to be told, and there lay the reason for my seeking some excuse. It came to me in the first Sunday game. There were 500 men and boys who had never attended one of our games. No one ever saw a wilder crowd. It was as if they had been let out of an asylum. They were crazy, but it was with happiness. They screamed like Indians, but it was for freedom. I saw men smash their hats, boys throw their coats, and both yell with tears in their eyes. Why? Your Honor, I will tell you why. I know what it means to work from daylight to night, year in, year out, with no chance, no hope for the natural play every man and especially every boy loves. It is very easy for ministers and teachers to tell us working men how to spend the one free day, and no doubt they mean well, but they miss the point. On Sunday those shrieking, boisterous diggers, cappers, puddlers, refiners had gone back to their boyhood. They played the game for us with their hearts, their throats, their tears. The night after that game I had a change of feeling. I began to think perhaps after all it was not so bad for me to play ball on Sunday. I began to see things I had never seen before. If I could satisfy myself that the hundreds of men and boys were better off at a Sunday game than elsewhere, then I was justified in playing for their amusement. So I began to go round and ask questions. At first this searching for the truth was because of what I must tell my mother. Afterwards the thing itself interested me. I went to the foundries and factories, to the big refineries, to the brickyards, everywhere, and I found everybody knew me, everybody had a word for me, everybody's eyes shone at the mention of the next Sunday game. I talked to little boys and girls carrying dinner to their fathers, and I went home with them and talked to their mothers. One and all, these mothers welcomed the game. I visited the saloons and beer gardens, the roadhouses and the dance halls. I found them bitterly opposed to Sunday ball. Their Sunday business was ruined. 2 big gardens closed up after the second Sunday. I had seen some of these places when in full blast on a busy Sunday. The beer ran in streams and the air reeked. It seems to me those who make the laws would learn something if they became mere hard-working men. When their eyes burned in their heads and their backs ached and they never saw the sky and grew dull and weary, they would see differently. They wouldn't ask any man to sit in church and be told how to be good and happy. A man or a boy penned up all week needs some kind of fling. Your honor, I wrote my mother that I was not doing wrong when I played Sunday ball. I am not ashamed of it. We players are not a disgrace to Findlay." Chase sat down. Judge Meggs stroked his chin and watched his honor, while the crowd roared their applause. Finally Mayor Duff rapped on his desk. "I am sitting in judgment on this case as Mayor of Findlay, as deacon of the church bringing the action, and as director of the Findlay Baseball Association. I am rather submerged in the deep sea between the two sides, but I am happy to say that as mayor, church member, and director I have solved the problem. I do not want to go on record as agreeing entirely with Alloway. Still, so far as he is concerned, I uphold him. More than that, he has given us something to think about. I have long had my eye on those halls and gardens he spoke of, and now they shall be closed on Sunday. During the last few days I have visited every prominent business concern in Findlay, and I have laid before each this baseball situation. In substance, I said I would permit Sunday ball unless they gave their employees a half holiday on Saturdays. I have spoken of Findlay's prosperity, and that no small factor in the activity of business for the last few years has been the advertisement of our crack baseball team. I have gone to the different leaders of the churches and of society, and I have solicited their cooperation, assuring them that if they would join forces with me for the good of Findlay and the laboring classes and the baseball people, there need be no Sunday ball. I am happy to say that I have been entirely successful. There will be no Sunday ball. There will be no open shops or factories or mills on Saturday afternoons. We, all of us, working people, church people, everybody concerned, will profit by this. How much better it is for the baseball team to have the undivided support of Findlay. That is what it will have now. Findlay is proud of its baseball team. And it is proud of some other things: its prosperity, its good name, its old-fashioned institutions. We want still to have the quiet, serene Sundays our fathers and mothers had. I think it is to the credit of Findlay that we can meet this question and settle it to everybody's satisfaction. I am sure the matter has been wholesome for us as a city and as individuals. So I am happy to dismiss the case, assuring the prosecution and the defense that they have both won, and that their victory is in every way an advance, a betterment for the Commonwealth of Findlay. End of chapter 13. Chapter 14 of the Shortstop. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Rowdy Delaney, Idaho, USA. The Shortstop by Zane Gray. Chapter 14. Waiting It Out. It was a good thing for Chase and his batting average that right after the trial the Findlay team took their usual monthly trip on the road. Chase's hitting had been slowly dropping off, except for an occasional vicious double or triple during the last 2 weeks. But once away from home he returned rapidly to form. The team broke even on the trip, a satisfactory showing to Mac. "Sure, we're resting up for the break into the stretch," he said. They came home to find the town more stirred up than ever. The faction that had opposed the game now printed editorials, sent circulars and petitions, preached sermons, and worked indefatigably for Mac and his players, and therefore created all the more interest. The directors came out with the announcement that owing to the increased patronage it was necessary to have more seating capacity, and they erected another open stand. Chase was all the more popular. and more sought after than ever, but he could not take the pleasure in it that he had derived before his arrest. He was quiet and preoccupied, and he haunted the ball grounds on mornings, and practiced batting till Mac drove him out. "You Indian, you'll go stale," cried Mac. "Besides, you're batting all my practice balls over the fence for the kids to steal." Chase thought that 1,000 persons beaming upon him could not make up for the coldly averted look of one individual. He fondly imagined that the few whom he met at long intervals, who passed him by as if he were nothing, were the occasion of his gloom. He began to revel in a species of self pity. It remained for him to learn a good deal from his staunch friend, Mittie Maru. "Down in the mouth again? Didn't I once hear you ask Mac, 'What do you want for 15 cents? Canary birds?' Chase, me old college chum, you've got the pip. You couldn't see true a millstone wid a hole in it. Ain't you it round these diggin's? Sure as you're born, one of the big teams'll cop you out this fall. That'll mean 2,000 next season. And here you go, mopin' round like a dead one. What the 'ell's the matter wid you?" "I'm just a little off my feed, Mittie, I guess." "I reckon it's not thet. You've got the dangdest case I ever seen, Chase. A pair of sky blue eyes have been your finish. It's a case of shut out. No hit game. Not a look in. Marjory's folks have turned you down, and now everything you see is pea green." "Mittie Maru!" "Go on. You're insulted? Perfectly rude, ain't I? Say, I want her beat some sense into your block. You can't string me. I know, and I want her put in my oar. See? Fust thing you know, you'll be havin' a slump, and your fine record'll go to ballyhoo. Listen, I've been with Miss Marjory most every day while the team was away, and I had my troubles cheerin' her up. You ain't 1, 2, 6 to Miss Marjory for a dead one." Chase gave a start, turned wildly to Mittie, and stuttered, Is she sorry?" "Thought you'd come to. Sorry? Say, Marjory's washed all the sky blue out'n her eyes cryin'. She can't cry except when she's with me, so that's when I get it in the neck, as usual." What did she say?" "She didn't say much, 'cept, 'Mittie, he's angry with me.' Is he angry with me? Will he stay angry with me?" And then she weeps some more. "Angel," Chase murmured. "Say, Chase, if you've any regard for my friendship, cut that out. And you're wrong about Miss Marjory's bein' an angel. She's a little devil. I tell you, I bet she makes the fire fly for that bunch as was after your scalp. She won't go to church or Sunday school. She's sore on her mother, and she won't speak to the old man. She showed your speech that you made at the trial and was printed in the Chronicle to Mr. Marsden, and says it was better'n any sermon he ever preached. And she won't see him any more. She says they all make her tired. Oh, Marjory's got her back up, and she's gamer'n a red monkey. So all you've got to do is slip out to the river with me, and the rest's easy." "No, no, no!" cried Chase. "Then her folks would have something against me. What? I can't do it, Mittie, and yet I want to see her." "Are you goin' to quit? Lay down? Throw the game?" Chase struggled with his temptation and overcame it. "It wouldn't be right, Mittie." "Well, I'll be dinged. What's wrong about fightin' your own battles? Ain't Miss Marjory a girl? She don't know she's wild over you, but she is. All this knockin' of you has put the last crimp in her little romance. Her folks have had sense enough to see that. The more they say agin you, the more she'll be fer you. But darn her folks, I'm thinkin' about her. Presently she'll get wise to her own feelings, and then there you are, standin' off like that Greek feller on a monument. You want to be near home base when Miss Marjory gets wise to herself, and then if you run hard and make a good slide, you'll score. If you're not there, she'll freeze. Girls is girls. Darn the old folks. They preach a lot, and go round tellin' what angels they was onct. It's dollars to doughnuts they half lie and half forget." "Mittie, will you shut up?" demanded Chase in distraction. "What? Of all the ungrateful dubs! But hol' on, my feelin's ain't hurt. You're got to listen. I've been savin' my best hit for the last innin'. It's a corker. It's a homer, all right, all right. Miss Marjory's bought up all the buttons with your picture on that she could find. She's wearin' 'em for badges and medals and shirtwaist buttons and sleeve buttons, and I'm dinged if I know what else. Now what do you think of her?" But Chase fled without answering, nor turned at Mittie Marew's shrill yell. The gloom that shrouded him rolled away. Something seemed to sing to him that all would end well. Something whispered for him to wait. His mother had always told him to wait when in anger or doubt. And he applied her advice to temptation, to fear and trembling, to wonderful vague hopes. After the game that day, Mittie Maru sidled up to Chase, searched his face with a gleaming glance, and said: "I won't kid you any more, Chase. You can trust me to say the right thing to Miss Marjory. I've seen her every morning, and she wants to know a lot. And I'm a good liar. But what's your game?" "Waiting it out," replied Chase with a smile. The little hunchback nodded gravely and walked away with his slow, labored steps. Chase found a note at his boarding house. It was from Judge Meggs, asking him to call in the evening on a matter of some importance. After supper he hurried to the judge's home. It was a magnificent house, one of the finest in Findlay. Chase felt proud of being invited to call there. A maid admitted him and showed him into the library. "Hello, Chase. Have a chair," greeted the judge. "How's the game today? Was busy late and couldn't get out." "Mansfield was easy for us, 11-3, but they're weak, in last place." "Did you get any hits today?" "4, but 2 of them were Texas leaguers." "4 hits! You certainly are keeping it up. And what are Texas League hits?" "Little measly flies that drop over the head of an infielder. I hate them. I like to feel the bat spring and hear the ball ring off. To hang a bell on 'em, as Mittie Maru says." "You're growing heavier, Chase. You're filling out." "Yes. What do you think? I weigh nearly 170 now. It's funny, I'm getting fat when I perspire so much." "What was the feature of today's game?" "Cas's bulldog. He certainly made things hum." Now you know just before play is called every game, Mittie Maru puts the club colors on Algy, that's the bulldog's name, and runs him around the diamond. Just for luck, you know. Well, Algy sure is proud of that job. Today, as he was coming in the stretch, a little sassy, ugly pup ran out of the grandstand. Algy saw it and must have taken it for a rat. He's death on rats, for he bolted after it. Mittie tried to grab him, and Cas yelled like mad. I guess Cas knew what was coming off. Algy chased the little dog into the grandstand. There was a big crowd, lots of women. Well, it was funny. I never saw such a muss in my life. Of all the screaming you ever heard. The women stood on the chairs and fell over the men. Some of them got on the railing and were pushed off into the field. You know the wire screen in front of the grandstand back of home plate? Well, in the crush to get out of Algy's way, some women jumped on the railing and of course fell against the screen. It sagged out and dropped in a sort of bag, and there the women were, like fish in a net, kicking and floundering around. Mac said it beat a bargain sale in lingerie, whatever that is. Cas finally got a hold of Algy, and it surely was time enough. "There's always something new and funny at a ball game," said the judge, with his hearty laugh. "Now, Chase, let's talk business. I've got a proposition for you. Have you planned anything for the winter?" "No." "Is there any reason why you could not have your mother and brother come to live in Findlay?" "Why, I guess not." "I'm glad to hear it. I've got a job for you, $75 a month to start, with Meggs and Company. You know, my brother's big store, groceries, wholesale and retail, hardware, oil men's supplies, etc. I'm a member of the firm. We're investing heavily in new oil fields, branching out. You'll be busy in the store and keeping time of the men. You'll have a chance to learn things. This job will be ready for you soon. In the meantime, you hang around in the mornings and get on to your work. How does the idea strike you?" "Thank you. Why, it's simply bully. Only, does that mean I must give up baseball?" "Certainly not. It's a winter's work for you. You must stick to baseball till you've made some money. But I take it you won't loaf between seasons. I just thought I'd throw this in your way. We need a young man. And as I hinted, there might turn up something of future value to you. I accept. Thank you very much. Now here's another idea. There's a cottage on a plot of ground, 10 acres, I think, on Elm Street, just on the outskirts of town. It's a pretty place, and for sale cheap. A little money on repairs would make it a nice home. There's an orchard, a grove of maples, and the river runs along the edge of it. This place would be a good investment at twice the price asked for it. I know. I am interested in a real estate deal with some men here. King's one, so's Mayor Duff. We're going to develop a good bit of ground to the north of town. Prices will go up out that way. I can get this place on any terms you want. You can buy it for less than rent. You run out there first thing tomorrow, and if you like the place, come to my office and we'll close the deal. Now, let's have a game of billiards." Chase left the judge and went to his room with his mind too full of plans to permit of sleep till late in the night. He awakened early, and breakfast being entirely superfluous, he hurried north to Elm Street and thence the outskirts of town. There was no mistaking the cottage, because it was the only one. Chase felt it was altogether out of the question for him to own such a place. The cottage sat back from the road on a little hill. It was low, many gabled, vine covered, and had a porch all the way round. A giant maple shaded the western side. Chase went in. The first room was long, had a deep seat in a bay window, and an open fireplace. He saw in fancy a blazing fire there on a winter's evening. There were a dining room, and a kitchen, and a cozy pantry. Upstairs were 4 bedrooms. The west one, all bay windows and bright, would be for his mother. The adjoining one would be Will's, and the little room in the back, from which he saw the grove and the river, would be his. Then he punched himself and said, "I'm dreaming again." He looked into the well in the back yard and straightway began singing "The Old Oaken Bucket." He flew through the orchard and ran into the grove of maples. The trees, the fence, the hill sloped down to the river. There was a little fall and a deep pool and a great mossy stone. "I've got to hurry back to the judge's and be waked out of this," muttered Chase. "What would Mittie think? He'd say there'd never be any hope of my coming down after this ascension." Chase started for town. He would run a little way, then check himself, only to break out into another dash. He got to Judge Megg's office before opening hours and sat down to wait. The time dragged. One moment he'd call himself a fool, and the next he remembered the judge's kindly eyes. "Well, well, good morning, Chase. The early bird catches the worm. Come in, come in. How did you like the cottage?" Chase stuttered and broke out into an unintelligible speech. Then he grew more confused and bewildered. He heard the kind voice and felt the kind hand on his shoulder. He remembered running breathlessly to the bank and drawing a sum of money. He signed his name to stamped papers, and then the judge was telling him that the property was his. Chase finished this wonderful morning of mornings in his room. After a long time he got a logical idea of things. He had bought a property for $1,800, $200 down and $20 each month until the debt was canceled. The deeds were signed and stamped, and most strange and remarkable of all was to read the name of the former owner, Silas Meggs. Chase spent another morning consulting carpenters, plasterers, paper hangers, and the next he presented himself at the store of Meggs & Company. He was told to spend his time for the present in the different oil fields, familiarizing himself with men, conditions, and machinery. And the senior member of the firm added significantly, "You need not mention your connection with us for a while yet. Just be looking round casually. But be sharp as a steel trap. You may learn things of interest to us." Chase wondered what next would happen to him. There was certainly a thrill in the prospect before him. Such men as Judge Meggs and his brother would not stoop to the employing of a spy, but they might well have use for a detective. Chase had heard strange stories from the oil fields. The oil belt was a scene of great activity that summer. Strikes, unprecedented in the history of boring wells, had been made. All over the belt rose a forest of wooden derricks, with their ladders and queer wheels and enormous pump handles ceaselessly working up and down. Pipes ran in all directions. Huge tanks loomed up everywhere. Puffs of smoke marked the pumping engines sheltered in little huts. The ground was black and oily, and the smell of oil overpowering. "Crude oil 75 cents a barrel!" ejaculated Chase, as he watched the great comical looking handles bobbing up, some of them pumping 100 barrels a day. "These oil men get rich while they sleep." Chase found that as he was known in the factories and brickyards, so was he known in the oil fields. All gates were open to him. Every grimy workman found time to stop and have a word with him. The governor of Ohio could not have commanded the interest, to say nothing of the friendliness, accorded to the boy baseball player. It was not long before Chase appreciated his usefulness to Meggs and Company. He had a pleasant word for every worker. "Hello, I'm out looking over the oil field. Say, that's interesting work of yours. Tell me about it." Then a grimy face would break into a smile. "Howdy, Chase. I were jest thinkin' about the team. Close race, ain't it? But we'll put it all over on Columbus next week. I'll be there Saturday and hope you knock the socks off one. Work? This is rotten work I'm on here. Don't need to be done at all." And then the baseball fan would tell the baseball player details of work that a superintendent could not have dragged from him. Every engineer and prospector and driller cared to rest and talk to Chase. The boy was bright and pleasant, but the magic halo of a ball player's fame was the secret of his reception. So it was that he learned things and surprised the senior member and won an approving word from the judge. Chase did not visit the same part of the oil fields twice. The wide belt extended 100 miles toward Lima and beyond. It would have required months to go over it all. One morning he went out to see a new well called the Geyser, just struck, and reported to be the biggest well in the fields. He found a scene of great excitement. Embankments had been thrown up 3 feet all around the well to catch the jet of oil. There was a lake of oil 3 feet deep. In some places it broke over the embankment. With more than his usual luck he met an Irishman who had come to him during one of the games and tried to give him part of a wager he had won on Findlay. "Hello, Pat. Somebody's struck a dandy, eh?" "Shure, an' it's the ould man himself. Come round and let me show you. He blowed the bloomin' derrick a mile, but we got him under control now." "Who are the owners?" "Dean and Pitman Company," replied Pat. Chase perked up his ears. He knew that this Dean was Marjory's father. He had learned the firm was in a bad financial strait, having repeatedly backed unproductive ventures. When he saw the lake of oil he had a warm glow of pleasure. He was glad for Marjory's sake. "What's the flow? Must be a regular river." "Flow? He'll flow 100,000 barrels a day for a while, and that without a pump." "Whee!" exclaimed Chase. "It's too bad, too bad. Sich a grand well," said Pat, "but it'll never last." "Why not?" Pat winked mysteriously, but offered no explanation. Chase left him and talked with the other men. He found that the land on which the well had been struck belonged to Findlay farmers, and a lease of it had been sought by one of the greatest oil companies in the world. Chase's next move was to find out from the farmers thereabouts if there was any unleased land adjoining. There was one plot of ground, hilly, rocky, impractical for boring, that stood close to the field of the Geyser, and which had just been leased by a large company. Chase strolled over the field and to his great surprise was ordered off. Then a man evidently in authority recognized Chase and countermanded the order, giving as excuse some trifling remark about thieves. Chase did not believe the man. He sauntered round as if he were killing time, talked baseball with the men, and remained only a short while. But once out of sight he started to run, and he never stopped till he reached the trolley line. he boarded a car, rode into town, leaped off, and again began running. At the office of Dean and Pitman a boy said Mr. Pitman was out of town and Mr. Dean at lunch. Then Chase once again took to his heels. Breathlessly he dashed upon the porch and knocked on the door of the Dean house. Marjory opened it and uttered a cry at the sight of Chase. "Where's your father?" he demanded. Marjory turned white and began to tremble. The blue eyes widened. "Papa is at lunch. Oh, Chase!" "Tell him I want to see him. Quick! Quick!" His sharp voice rang clearly through the house. A chair scraped, and hurried steps preceded the appearance of Mr. Dean, a little weather beaten man of mild aspect. "What's this?" "Mr. Dean, I've been out to the oil well. The field next to yours has been leased by Monarch Company. They're drilling day and night, and they know they can't strike oil there. It's a plot to ruin the geyser. They'll sink 1,000 pounds of dynamite, explode it, and ruin forever your well. Come on, you haven't much time. They're nearly ready. I saw everything. It's a cold fact. But you can hold them up. We'll get Wilson, the expert, and an officer, and stop the work. Come on, come on." End of chapter 14. Chapter 15 of the Shortstop. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Rowdy Delaney, Idaho, USA. The Shortstop by Zane Gray. Chapter 15. The Great Game. On the third day of the last series between Columbus and Findlay, the percentage of games won favored the former team by several points. If Columbus won the deciding game, which was the last on their schedule, they would win the pennant. If Findlay won, the percentage would go to a tie. But having 3 more games with the tail end Mansfield team, they were practically sure of capturing the flag. The excitement in and about Findlay was intense. Stores and shops and fields closed before noon that Saturday. The pride of Findlay rose in arms. Class was forgotten in loyalty to the common cause. The Pastime Ballpark opened at 1 o'clock and closed at 2:30, packed to its utmost capacity. Hundreds of people were left clamoring outside. The grandstand made a brave picture. Quality was out in force. The mass of white and blue of the ladies, and their bright moving fans and soft murmuring laughter lent the scene that last charm which made it softly gay. Out on the bleachers and in the roped off side lines was a dense, hilarious, coatless and ventless mob. Peanuts flew like hail in a storm. From one end of the grounds to the other passed a long ripple of unrestrained happiness. The sky shone blue, the field gleamed green, the hour of play was at hand. The practice of both teams received more applause than average games, and the batting order, at last posted on the huge blackboard, excited an extra roar. Findlay, Winters third base, Thatcher center field, Chase shortstop, Havel left field, Benny second base, Ford first base, Spear right field, Hicks catcher, Castorius pitcher. Columbus, Welch left field, Kelly shortstop, Horn catcher, Wilson third base, Harvey center field, O'Rourke right field, Stark second base, Haynes first base, Ward catcher. Umpire Connor. Mac threw up his hands when he saw the name of the umpire. The truth of the matter was that Mac was in a highly nervous state. Managing a ball team was 1 point less trying than governing an army in the field. The long campaign had worn Mac out. "Silk!" he exclaimed. "I wired the president to send any umpire but Silk. He's after us." Then Cas put on Algy's coat of white and blue and sent him out. Algie knew his business. As the gong called the Columbus players in from practice, Algie pranced round the diamond. When he reached the plate, Cas, who stepped from the bench, called sharply to him. Algie promptly stood on his hind legs. "That's for Findlay!" yelled Cas to the stands. Then Algie made a ludicrous but valiant effort to stand on his head. "That's for Columbus!" yelled Cas. The long, laughing roar of the delighted crowd attested to the popular regard for the great pitcher and his dog. "What'll we take, the field or bat?" asked Mac, beginning to fidget. "Have you lost your nut?" inquired Enoch, softly. "The bat! The bat!" "Now, fellers, get in the game. We're all on edge. Ward has always been hard for us to beat, but if we can once get him started, it's all off." "Chase, come here," said Mac. Then he whispered, "I can't keep it. Burke, the Detroit manager, is up in the stand. For Lord's sake, break loose today. Mannin says to me just a minute ago that if you get 2 hits in this game your average 'll go over 400. I oughtn't to tell you, but I can't help it." "I'm glad you did," replied Chase, with his fingers clinching into his bat. "Ward's got steam today," growled Mittie Maru. "You guys want her perk up." "Play ball," called Silk. The crowd shouted one quick, welcoming cry, and then subsided into watchful, waiting suspense. Enoch hit a fly to Kelly, and Thatcher went out, Wilson to Haines. Chase sent a slow grounder towards short. Wilson fielded the ball as quickly as possible and made a good throw, but Chase, running like a deer, beat the ball to first. The eager crowd opened up. Havil, however, fell a victim to Ward's curves. For Columbus, Welch hit safely. Kelly sacrificed, sending the fleet left fielder to second. On the next play he stole third and scored on Horn's long fly to Havil. Wilson fouled out. Findlay 0, Columbus 1. Mac began to fidget worse than ever and greeted Cas with a long face. "What's the matter with you? Ball doesn't seem to have any speed." Cas deigned not to notice the little manager. When Benny got a base on balls, Mac nudged the player next to him and brightened up. "Bunt, Ford," he said, and when Ford laid down a neat sacrifice, Mac nudged the player on the other side. "That's good. That's good." Spear hit safely, scoring Benny. Thereupon Mac jammed his elbow into Enoch's ribs and bubbled over. "Makin' sausage again?" inquired the genial captain with soft sarcasm. All the players had sore ribs from these jabs of Mac's elbows. He had the most singular way, when the team was winning, of slipping from one end of the bench to the other, jabbing his appreciation of good plays into the anatomy of his long suffering team. Cas never sat on the bench, and Enoch, always forgetful, usually came in for most of the jabs. Hicks made a good bid for a hit, but, being slow, could not get to first ahead of the ball. Spear went to third. Cas got a double along the left foul line. Enoch walked on balls, and Thatcher's hit scored Cas. The Columbus second baseman caught Enoch trying to get a lead off second. Findlay 3, Columbus 1. All the while the crowd roared, and all the while Mac on the bench was going through his peculiar evolutions. "A bingo! Good!" Jab and jab. "Will you look at that?" Jab and jab. "Keep after 'em!" Jab and jab. "Oh! Oh! Run, you Indian, run!" Jab, jab, jab. Neither team scored in the third. Findlay failed again in the fourth, but Columbus tied the score. The game began to warm up. With one man out, Chase opened the fifth with a hard hit to right. He believed he could stretch it into a double, and strained every nerve. He saw the second baseman brace himself, and without slackening his speed, he leaped feet first into the air. He struck the ground and shot through the dust to the base. Just an instant after, he felt the baseman tag him sharply with the ball. Lying there, Chase looked for the umpire. Silk came racing down, swept his right hand toward the sidelines, and said, "You made a grand slide, but you're out." It seemed then that Chase's every vein burst with the mad riot of hot blood. He sprang to his feet. "Out? Out? Why, he never touched me till after I hit the bag." "Don't show off before Burke," called Silk. "You're out. Perambulate." Chase stamped in his fury, but the mention of Burke cooled him. As he walked off the whole Findlay team, led by Mac, made for the umpire with angry eyes. "Go back! Go back!" yelled Silk. "To the bench! I'm running this game." "To the bench, or I'll flash my watch." The uproar in the stands and bleachers gave place to an uproar back of center field. A portion of the fence suddenly crashed forward, and through the gap poured a black stream of yelling men and boys. That one bad decision had served to upset Mac's equilibrium, and he was now raging. Enoch reasoned with him. Cas swore at him. Some of the other players gave him sharp answers. Mac was plainly not himself. He showed it in that inning when he discarded the usual signs and told the team to go ahead on its own hook. Havil and Benny failed to get on base, and once more the Columbus team trotted to the bat. Then the unexpected, the terrible happened. By sharp hitting, Columbus scored 5 runs. Cas labored in the box, but he could not stem the torrent of base hits. A fast double play by Chase and Benny and a good catch by Havil retired the side. Findlay 3, Columbus 8. A profound gloom settled over the field. The bleachers groaned and a murmur ran through the grandstand. Cas walked up to the bench and confronted Mac. "I'm done," said the great pitcher simply. "My speed's gone. I strained my arm the last game. You'd better put Poke in. He's left-handed, and his speed will likely fool Columbus after my floaters. But say, I won't go out till I get a chance to get after Silk. He needs a little jacking up. He wouldn't give me the corners. I'll make him sick. And fellas, don't quit." "Oh, we're licked, we're licked," cried Mac. Any one to have seen his face would have known how hard he had worked and what the pennant meant to him. But his players evidently were not of the same mind. They were mostly silent, with knitted brows and compressed lips. Mittie Maru never wavered in his crisp, curt encouragement. "What do we care for 5 runs? A couple of bingos and Ward's in the air. We can win with 2 out in the 9th, and here we got enough time left to win 2 games. Stick at 'em. Don't quit. Keep the yellow down. We'll put this game on ice all right, all right." Cas slowly walked up to the plate. The great crowd had not hope enough to cheer. When the umpire called the first ball, which was pretty well up to Cas's chin, a strike, the crowd yelled. Cas turned square round and glared at Silk. That worthy called another strike while Cas's back was turned to the pitcher. He did right, of course, but the crowd did not know it or think so, and they yelled louder. Cas made no effort to hit the next ball, which was also a strike. "Out!" called Silk, adjusting his indicator. Cas turned upon the umpire. No tragedian ever put forth a greater effect of outraged scorn and injustice. "What?" he roared in a voice that penetrated the remotest corners of the field. "3 strikes and out," repeated Silk. "It was wide," yelled Cas grandly. "Batter up," called Silk. "Say, haven't I a right to speak a word?" demanded Cas. He deliberately walked up to Silk. It was Cas's ruse, a trick as old as baseball, to make a fierce stand in order to influence the umpire on future close decisions. Poor umpires! Theirs was the thankless task, the difficult task, and they were only human. "You're way off today, Silk," went on Cas. "You're rotten. You wouldn't give me the corners, but you give them to Ward." "Back to the bench," ordered Silk. "Can't I say a word?" "Not to me." "You're rotten. Costs you 25. Ha! Now you're goin' some. Queered my pitching, struck me out, and now you fine me. We've got a grand show with you callin' the plays. Make it 50, you robber." "50 it is," replied Silk. "Put me out of the game. You're from Columbus. Go ahead, put me out of the game." "Out you go!" shouted Silk. The crowd heard and rose with a roar of rage. Cas was their idol, and they were with him to a man. They stamped, yelled, and hissed their disapproval. It began to be a tight place for Silk, and he knew it. Right was on his side, but under trying circumstances such as these, right did not always triumph. "Put me off the grounds!" bawled Cas. "Off you go!" yelled Silk, white in the face. Then Cas showed his understanding of the crowd and the serious nature of the situation. He had turned his trick, now to avert real disaster. It would not have been wise for an umpire to call the game in the face of that angry grandstand and crazy bleachers. Not one umpire in 100 would have had the nerve. But it was evident that Cas thought Silk might, for he was not afraid of anything. So Cas waved his long arms to the crowds, motioning them to sit down. "All right, Silk, out for mine." Cas ran for the bench and grabbed his sweater. He shook his big fist in Poke's face. "Now, Rube, at 'em, fast and over the pan. Mittie, you roast this bunch of deaders back to life." Mac was sitting with his head bowed in his hands. At Cas's last words he raised a heartbroken face and began to rail at the umpire, at Cas for having a glass arm, and at all the players. When Enoch got hit by a pitched ball and thereby sent to his base with Thatcher up, Mac senselessly yelled to him and tried to start a hit and run game, which he had a few moments before discarded. Enoch and Thatcher got confused, and finally when Thatcher hit into second, both were easy outs in a double play. Then the players, sore and disgusted, told Mac a few things. The little manager looked sick. "I'm running this team," he howled. Chase suddenly confronted him with blazing eyes. "No, you're not running the team. You're queerin' our chances. You've lost your head. Go soak it. Climb under the bench. Crawl through the fence. Anything, only get out." Mac fell back a beaten man. His eyes bulged, his lips moved, but no sound came forth. It was plain that he could not believe what he had heard. Chase, his find, his idol, his star, had risen against him. "We'll win this game yet. Go hide somewhere so we can't see your face. Mittie will run the team." "Mittie?" echoed Mac. Then a spark of Chase's inspiration touched his smoldering baseball sense. Managers and players often do strange things. They follow blind leads and believe in queer omens. They are as superstitious as Indians. Without a word, Mac yielded to his impulse and left the bench. Mittie Maru jumped up into the vacated seat. A glow lighted his pale face. His beautiful eyes had a piercing, steely flash. "Rube," he said to Poke, "cut the inside corner. Keep 'em high and speed 'em up." The big knots stood out and rippled on the rail splitter's arms. He was not lost to his opportunity. And there were friends and admirers from his native town there to see him, to glory in his glory. He struck out 3 successive Columbus hitters, and the hopeless crowd took a little heart. "What'll I do, Mittie?" asked Chase, picking out his bat. "They're playing deep for you. Dump one down third." Chase placed a slow teasing bunt down the third base line and raced with all his speed for first. The play was not even close. It was his third hit. Havil looked at Mittie. The manager said, "Bunt towards first." The second ball pitched, Havil laid down as if by hand along the first base line. 2 on bases, no one out. The crowd awoke. "Now for mine, Mittie," asked Benny. "We'll try a double steal. It's not good baseball, but we'll try it. Swing wild on the ball and balk the catcher. If the play goes through, just tap the next ball down in the infield." Benny fell all over himself and all over the catcher. Chase dove into third and Havil reached second. The bleachers began to yell and stamp. As Ward got into motion with his swing, Chase started home. It happened that the ball was a slow one, and Chase seemed to be beating it to the plate. Everybody gasped. Then Benny tapped the ball in the infield and broke for first. The play bewildered the pitcher, catcher, and third baseman. Chase scored. Havil went to third, and Benny reached first. Then the shrill cries, the whistles, the tin horns and clapping hands showed that the crowd had awakened fully to possibilities. Ford hit into deep short, who threw to second to catch Benny. The play was a close one, and Silk's decision favored the runner. Havil scored. 2 runs scored, 2 men on bases, and nobody out. Roar on roar. Through it all the little ragged hunchback sat coldly impervious. His fire raged deep. The years of pain and hopeless longing, the boyish hopes never to be fulfilled, had their recompense in that hour of glory. To a man the players now believed in him. As boy, as manager, as genius, as baseball luck. Spear bunted better than he hit, a fact of which Mittie took advantage. Lay one down to Wilson. Wilson divined the play, came rushing in, picked up the bunt with one hand, and made a splendid throw. One out, runners on second and third. Hicks was a poor hitter in a pinch, another fact Mittie remembered. Work a base on balls. Work hard now. The contortions old man Hicks went through would have disconcerted most pitchers. Ward threw 3 balls for Hicks, then 2 strikes, and the next one straight over, seemed a little high. Everybody gasped again. 4 balls, called Silk. The crowd broke out afresh. 1 out, 3 runners on bases. Ziegler, batting for Castorious, hit a mean, twisting grounder between short and third. Both men went after it, knocked it down between them, but too late to catch the hitter. Another run scored, and bases full. How the bleachers screamed! "Bing one, Cap!" said Mittie from the heights. Enoch met the first ball squarely. It sailed fast and true into the second baseman's hands. The runners had no chance to move. "Oh, hard luck!" moaned the crowd. "Never mind that. Stick at 'em!" cried Mittie, jumping down from his perch. "A couple more hits and the game's on ice. Dude, poke one to left. Don't swing, just poke one over the infield." Thatcher went to bat while Enoch ran to the coacher's box and began to yell and scream, to tear up the grass with his spikes, to give every indication of insanity. Thatcher was remorselessly unanxious. He made Ward split the plate, and at last with 3 and 2 he placed a short fly back of third. Another runner scored. 2 out, bases full, 1 run to tie. Mittie Maru suddenly lost all his quiet. He jumped at Chase and clasped him with small claw-like hands. His eyes shone on Chase with a power that was hypnotic. And through the gleam of power beamed his friendship and hope and faith. "Chase, something told me it would hang fire for you. Now, my Star of the Diamond, it's up to you. If ever in your life you put wood on it, do it now." When Chase hurried to the plate, the great crowd rose and shouted one long, sharp cry, and sank into intense silence. The situation was too critical for anything but suspended breath. Enoch's coaching pealed over the field. "Oh, my! Mugg's Landin', Irish stew, lace curtains, razzmatazz! We're a goin' to do it! We can't be stopped now! Oh, my! They're takin' him out! They need another pitcher!" The Columbus captain sent Ward to the bench and ordered out Hinson, a left-hander. He nervously rubbed the ball. Enoch broke loose again. "Hinson, look who's at the bat!" he yelled in terrible tones. "It's Chase! He's leadin' the league! Oh, my! Mugg's Landin'!" If ever Chase felt like flint, the time was then. He heard nothing. He saw nothing but the pitcher. It seemed he called upon all his faculties to help his eyesight. His whole inner being swelled with emotions that he subordinated to deadly assurance. Hinson took his swing and sent up a fastball. Chase watched it speed by. "Ball," called Silk. Hinson swung again. Chase got the range of the ball, stepped forward, and, with his straight, clean, powerful sweep, met it fairly. Bing! It rang off like a bell. The crowd burst into thunder. When Chase's liners started off so, only the fence stopped them. This one shot for the corner behind center field. For an instant everybody thought the ball was going over, but it hit a billboard and bounced back. What a long, booming, hoarse, and thrilling roar rent the air. 2 runners scored, and Thatcher was coming fast. Then, in the wild moment, all grasped that Chase, with his wonderful fleetness, was gaining on Thatcher. His fair hair streamed in the wind. His beautiful stride swallowed up the distance. The center fielder got the ball and threw to Stark, who had run out to receive the throw. As Chase, now close to Thatcher, turned third, Stark lined the ball home. Every heart was bursting, every eye was staring. The women were screaming, "Run, boy! Run, boy! Oh, run, run, run!" and yet could not hear their own voices. The men were roaring, "On! On! On! Ah!" The Findlay players leapt like warriors around a stake. Mittie Maru ran toward the plate. Stark's great throw sped on. Thatcher scored. "Slide, Chase, slide!" In one blended roar the whole crowd voiced a fear awful at the moment. Chase slid in a flash of dust across the plate, a fraction of time ahead of the ball. It bounded low, glanced off the catcher's glove, and struck Mittie, who whirled late, fairly on his hump. Poor Mittie went down as if he had been shot, spun round like a top, and lay still. But few on the field saw this accident. The crowd had gone into a sort of baseball delirium tremens. Chase had made a home run inside the grounds, scoring 4 more runs. A thunderbolt out of the clear sky would have passed unnoticed. Someone carried Mittie into the dressing room. The game went on. Polk blanked the Columbus players inning after inning. The heart was taken out of them. Findlay won. Before a weak, voiceless, shaken, disheveled, happy crowd, the score went up. Findlay 11, Columbus 8. Inside the dressing room the players grouped silently, with pale faces, around a space where a doctor worked over Mittie Maru. A cold hand gripped their hearts. The doctor kept shaking his head and working. Still the little misshapen form lay huddled in a small heap. The pale, distorted face showed no sign of life. "Ah!" breathed the doctor in sudden relief. Mittie Maru began to stir. He twisted, his narrow breast heaved. He moaned in pain, broke into incoherent speech. Then, as consciousness fully returned, he lived over the last play he had seen. "Steady, Chase, old man. Eagle eye. Now, old boy. Lay back. Bing the next one. Oh, run, Chase. Up on your toes. Now you're flying. Make it a triple. Come on, come on, come on, on. It's a homer. It's a homer. It's a homer." End of chapter 15. Chapter 16 of The Shortstop. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Rowdy Delaney, Idaho, USA. The Shortstop by Zane Gray. Chapter 16. Last Innings. It was Wednesday, following the great Saturday game. Chase hurried to his room, where he had taken Mittie after the accident. He found the lad sitting up, a little wan, but bright and expectant. "All over, Mittie!" shouted Chase. "The season's over. The championship is ours. Today was the last game, and the directors made it a benefit for the team. Bully of them, wasn't it?" "No more'n square. The team's made barrels of money. What'd you do today?" "Oh, made Mac sore as usual." "How?" "Well, we smothered Mansfield in an inning or so, and then Mac wanted us to lay down, strike out, make the game short. Now I'd have had to try to bing one, even if my life were threatened. So I caught one on the nose, and by George, Mittie, I hit it over the fence, and the ball broke a window in Mrs. McGee's house. Mac'll have to pay damages. Say, but wasn't he sore? That makes 6 homers for you, Chase, on our own grounds. And you've had 14 triples and only 3 doubles. It's strange about that. Most fellers get more doubles, but you're so dang fast on your feet that you'd stretch most any double into a triple. Gimme them long liner triples for mine." "Mittie, how are you feeling? How about the banquet tonight?" "I'll go, you bet. I'd be out home long ago if you hadn't made me promise to stay here." Mittie, I've had some ideas working in my mind the last few days, and now everything's settled. You're going to live with me." "Am I?" began Mittie, rebelliously. "Yes. I've got a tintype of myself spongin' off you here." "Not here, Mittie. I've bought that white cottage in the maple grove by the river, and I've had it all fixed up. It's now ready for the furnishings. In a few days I'll write to mother and Will to pack their duds and come on. Maybe we won't surprise them. You'll come out there and live with us. There's a dandy little room next to mine. It'll be yours. You like Will, and you love mother. She's the sweetest " "I ain't a goin' to do it," cried Mittie, in a queer, strangled voice. The old, resolute strength had gone from it. "Yes, you are. I'm big enough to carry you out there and tie you if necessary. And I've got another idea. You know that little alcove next to King's store? Well, there's one there. I've had a carpenter measure it, and he's going to build a wee little stand there. You and I are going into business. Cigars, tobacco, candy, etc. I furnish capital, you manage affairs, we divide profits. Why, it's a gold mine. There's not a place of that kind in town. Everybody knows you. Everybody wants to do something for you. Didn't you ever think of selling things? There's money in it." "Chase, it'd be grand," said Mittie. "I'll do it. Chase, if you ain't the best ever. But haven't you any idees for yourself?" Then Mittie Maru, the defiant, the Spartan lad, the sufficient unto himself, the scorner of emotions, the dweller in lonesome places, covered his face and sobbed as might any of the boys whom he ridiculed. But his weakness did not last long. "Chase, I'll be dinged if that soak I got in the game Saturday hasn't given me softenin' of the brain," he said, and smiled through his tears. Chase had seen the light of that smile in his mother's eyes, and in the eyes of another of whom he must not think. For a moment a warm wave thrilled over him, and he felt himself sway beneath its influence. He had done his best for his mother. He had done right by Marjory. He had waited and waited. So he made himself think of other things, of the new home, of peace for his mother, of ambition for Will, of companionship with Mittie, of his opening career. "Come on, Mittie. We have to fix up in style for the dinner tonight, and it's time we were at it." When they reached the hotel, Mac made a grab for Chase and beamed on him. "Chase, old boy, sure things are comin' great. Cas goes to Cleveland for a tryout. I've sold Benny to Cincinnati and you to Detroit. Burke offered $1,200 for you on Saturday, but I held out for $15, and I got the check tonight. I promised you 1/3 if you hit 400, and you've gone and hit 416. Chase, that's awful for a first season. You lead the league, and tomorrow you get your $500. Burke wrote me to tell you he'd send the contract. He offers 2,000. So you're on, and I'm tickled to death. I've made a star of you, and you've made me a manager." Somebody else grabbed for Chase. It was Judge Meggs, who congratulated him warmly. Then Chase, with Mittie Maru hanging to his coat sleeve, was deluged in a storm of felicitations. The banquet room, with its long decorated table, brought a yell from the hungry ball players. The waiters began moving swiftly to and fro. The glasses clinked musically. The noisy hum of conversation and jest grew steadily louder and gayer. There were 14 courses, and every player ate every course, except Benny, who got stalled on the unlucky 13th. Then chairs were shoved back and cigars lighted. Judge Meggs, who was toastmaster, rose and spoke for a few moments, congratulating Findlay on her great ball team, and the directors on their prosperous season, and the players on having won the championship. At the close he ended with a neat presentation speech. Then before each player was placed a large colored box with a fitting inscription on the lid. Chase's was 416. Enoch's was Mugg's Landing. Benny's was My Molly O. On Cas's was a terrible representation of a bulldog with the name Algy above, and below Cas's well-known "Wha-at?" And so on it went down the line. Inside the boxes were the purses. shares of benefit, presents from directors and from individuals. Chase won both hitting and base stealing purses. Cas, the pitchers. Enoch, the fielders. Each got a silver watch, a gold scarf pin, and link cuff buttons. Each got cards calling for an umbrella, a hat, a Morris chair, a box of candy. All received different presents from personal friends and admirers. Chase was almost overcome to find that Judge Meggs and other friends had that very morning furnished his cottage completely. Then the toastmaster interrupted the happy buzzings and called on Mac. The little manager bounced up with shiny face. He lauded Findlay and its generous citizens. He raved about the baseball team. He spouted over Cas and Benny, and almost ended in tears over Chase. "Gentlemen," said Judge Meggs impressively, "we have with us tonight a remarkable ball player and good fellow. He has captained the team with excellent judgment. He has been a great factor in our victory. We have expected much of him and have not been disappointed. We expect much of him tonight. For surely a man with his wonderful command of language, his startling originality of expression, and his powers of uninterrupted, flowing speech, such as we are all so happily familiar with, will give us a farewell word to cheer our hearts through the long winter to come. Gentlemen, Mr. Enoch Winters." Enoch rose as if some subterranean force had propelled him. His round red face and round owl eyes had their habitual expression of placid wisdom, but Enoch had difficulty with his vocalization. "Gentlemen," he began, and then it was evident his voice frightened him. You see," he stammered, rolled up his tongue into his cheek to find his never failing quid this time failing him. "Great honor. Sure, we 'preciate." Then the voluble coacher, the bane of pitchers and umpires, the terror of the inexperienced, stammered that something was too full for words, and sat down. Whether he said stomach or heart no one knew, but all assumed he meant the latter, and roared their applause. Judge Meggs, with a few fitting words, called upon Castorious, and Cas, of the iron arm, iron heart and voice, could not establish relations between his mind and his speech. Judge Meggs said, "Gentlemen, we want to hear from our great second baseman, who, we are sorry to say, and happy also, will not be with us next season, for he is going higher up. We have heard of a yet better stroke of fortune that has befallen him. In brief, we understand that he has won from our midst one of Findlay's sweetest and best girls, and that the happy fulfillment of such good fortune is to be celebrated upon a day in the near future. We think he owes us something. Gentlemen, Mr. Benny Ross." "No one ever had such friends," cried Benny dramatically. "No one ever had such friends." And that was all he could say. "Gentlemen," said Judge Meggs, "we have with us tonight a lad who came to Findlay empty handed, yet who brought much. We shall watch his future as we have watched him develop here. And when he returns to Findlay to become one of her solid, substantial business men, we shall not forget when he was a star of the diamond. Gentlemen, Mr. Chase Alloway." Chase managed to rise to his feet, but was utterly unable to respond. Emotion made him speechless. He smiled helplessly at Judge Meggs and sat down. The judge called upon several other players, and they too might as well have been dumb. Then Mittie Maru laboriously climbed upon his chair and raised his strange, shrunken figure. He put his right hand to his breast and beamed upon the company. "Mr. Toastmaster and friends," began Mittie, "my worthy captain and fellow players are too full for utterance. Mebbe the sparkling stuff in the long stem glasses has tongue tied 'em. Somebody must thank you gentlemen for this banquet, and it's up to me. If the bases was full now we could feel sure of gettin' a hit, for we're sure long on hits and short on speeches." "For the team I wanter say that this is a gran' an' glorious occasion, that Findlay is the finest town in the U.S., that the directors an' supporters of the team are real sports an' good fellows, the best ever. This has been a great summer for all of us, an' we've been happy. We're sorry it's over. Baseball players have to go from town to town, part from each other an' kind friends, an' I'm sure none of us will ever forget the fight we made for the pennant an' the friends we made in good old Findlay." Right warmly did all join in applause. Then, after a parting word from the judge, good nights were spoken, and the banquet to the championship team was over. Before Chase went home he wrote a letter to his mother and told her, as he was still boss of the family and disposed to become more so in the future, she and Will were to come to Findlay. They were to dispense with all the old useless furniture and belongings that would only have reminded them of past dark hours, and to come prepared for a surprise and future brightness. Chase slept poorly that night and kept Mittie Maru awake, and in the morning got him out at an early hour to see the cottage. It seemed that a fairy's hand had been at work during the last 48 hours. The cottage was furnished from one end to the other, not poorly nor yet lavishly, but in a manner that showed the taste of a woman and the hand of a man. Chase felt that some one had read his mind. Who had guessed which was to be his mother's room, and Will's, and his own, and therein placed such articles as would best please each? So Chase learned in another way that the needs of the human heart are alike in every one. That day he and Mittie loaded the pantry with all manner of groceries. Then, while Mittie went out to his old home in the brick kiln to fetch the few things he owned, Chase fitted up the little room next to his. When Mittie saw it, he screwed up his face and sat gingerly on the little white bed. "I'll be dinged if it ain't swell." After this Chase would have it that Mittie should go with him to a store and purchase a suit. Mittie submitted gracefully, and after a trying time in the store he produced a dilapidated pocketbook and began to count out the price marked on the tag of the selected suit. "No, you don't," said Chase. "This is on me." "Mebbe you thought I was busted," replied Mittie with a smile. "I ain't on my uppers yet, me boy. Never was much for style, but now, when the time comes, I can produce." Chase and Mittie were arguing the question when the storekeeper said they must regard the suit as a present, and refuse to be paid. "What to 'ell!" exclaimed Mittie. "Hev I been hittin' the pipe?" That afternoon and evening were very long to Chase. He slept that night from sheer exhaustion. He was up with the sun, woke Mittie, whistled, sang, and consulted his watch every few moments. The train he expected his mother and Will on was due at 10 o'clock. He packed his effects and sent Mittie for a wagon to take them to the cottage. Then he went, hours before train time, to the station, where he paced the platform. What an age it seemed! At last he heard the train whistle, and he trembled. He ran to and fro. Suppose they didn't come? With a puffing and rumbling the engine slowed up and came to a stop. Only 2 passengers got off, and upon these Chase swooped down like a hawk. He gathered the little woman up in his arms and smothered all her voice except "My Chase." "Hello, Will. How about college, old boy?" "You great brown giant." And that was all. Chase bundled them into a hack, and telling the driver where to go, he looked at his mother and brother so as really to see them. How changed they were! His mother's face had lost its weary shade. She was actually young and pretty again. And Will, he was not the same at all. Bells of joy rang in Chase's heart. Then he began to talk, and he talked like a babbling brook. Baseball, the championship, his leading the league, his sale to Detroit, his many friends, about the certainty of Will's going to college, everything but where they were going. Then the hack stopped. Chase helped them out, and turning to the hackman, thanked him and held up $1. "That's my treat," said the hackman, tipping his hat. "Say, "Isn't my money good around here?" demanded Chase. "Your money's same as counterfeitin', Findlay. Good luck." With a smile the hackman turned his team and drove away. "Chase, what a pretty place!" his mother said. "Do you board here?" "Well, not yet, but I hope to." Chase opened the front door and ushered them in. A bright fire crackled in the open grate. "Mother, this is home." Then for a brief space the three mingled tears with their happiness, and at last the mother raised her face with a flush. "How I have worried for nothing!" Chase called up the stairway. "Mittie, come down. We have company." Then he whispered to them, "Mittie is my little friend of whom I wrote. He's a hunchback. If you look at his eyes you will never think of his deformity." Mittie came down without reluctance, yet shyly. The new suit considerably altered his appearance. Nevertheless, as always, he made a strange and pathetic little figure. He advanced a few steps, stopped, and waited, with his fine eyes fixed gravely and steadily upon them. "I am very glad indeed to meet my son's friend, Mittie," said Chase's mother. "My name's Mitchell Malone," answered Mittie, "and I'm happy to know you and Chase's brother." "Mittie Maru he'll always be to me," said Chase. "Mother, he's going to live with us." "I have no home," replied Mittie to Mrs. Alloway's kind questioning look. "My parents are dead. I never saw them." Then followed the pleasant task of showing the cottage and grounds. The day passed like a happy dream. At sunset Chase slipped away from them and went down through the grove to the river. He was rejoicing in the happiness of others. Yet now that his hopes were realities, an unaccountable weight suddenly lay heavy as lead on his heart. He had succeeded beyond his wildest fancy. There was the cottage, and it contained his friend Mittie Maru, and Will, with the clear light of joy in his eyes, and his mother, well and happier than he had ever seen her. These were blessings such as he was sure he did not deserve. But humble and thankful as they made him, he was not entirely content. Suddenly the glamour of all he had been working to accomplish paled in the moment of its achievement. The swift flowing river murmured over stones and glided along the brown banks toward the setting sun. The song of the water was all the sound to break the silence. Silver clouds and golden light lay reflected in the river, and slowly shaded as the sun sank. This hour, with its diminishing brightness, its slow approach of gray twilight, its faint murmuring river song, sadder than any stillness, singularly fitted Chase's mood. A shout from Mittie Maru brought Chase out of the depths. He answered and turned toward the grove. Mittie came hobbling with a celerity that threatened peril to the frail limbs so unaccustomed to such effort. "Lock the gate!" he called out, waving a letter at Chase. "Wonder who's writing me?" asked Chase, failing to note Mittie's agitation. "Thet's Miss Marjory's writin'." Chase's hands trembled slightly. Mittie's eyes were gloriously bright. "Last innin's," sang out the lad. "You waited it out, Chase, an' now's time to dig. Get up on yer toes an' run, Chase. Run as you never run turnin' third in yer life, an' when you reach home base an' Miss Marjory an' score, why, just give her one for Mittie, who umpired yer game." Chase scarcely heard his little friend, and did not see him hurry away toward the cottage, for his eyes were now fixed on the opened letter. "This letter is as difficult to write now as it has been to keep from writing sooner. I have so much to tell you. Ever since you saved the Geyser well, father has been on my side, and I persuaded him to take me to see that last Columbus Findlay game. He had forgotten that he used to play ball when a boy, and it came back to him. First he grew excited, then red in the face, and he shouted till he lost his voice. Before the game was half over he turned purple. When you made that wonderful hit, he smashed a hole right through his hat. Such a state he was in when we got home. His hat was a wreck, his coat mussed, his collar wilted, and his face all crimson. but I never saw him so happy, and even mother's disgust at his appearance made no difference. I am sure we made life miserable for her. She said you might come to see me, and I say, come soon. Marjorie. End of Chapter 16. The End of The Shortstop by Zane Grey. Reading by Rowdy Delaney, Idaho, USA.